Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming today. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to start with a quick show of hands. So let's start. How many of you here in the audience own an Apple device? OK, that's a lot. I think that was not a very good question, since we all know how Apple controls the market, both on laptops and iOS. But that's not why we're here today. So let me ask you a much more specific question. How many of you use Siri?
Sorry, I did not quite get that.
OK, I think this is a very good point to turn off Siri or your iPhone, because it's going to turn up a lot. But you know, Siri is kind of old news. Like, we have many new sophisticated technologies today. So by saying that, how many of you use Apple Intelligence, or at least know about it? OK, so for everybody here who don't know what is Apple Intelligence, it's the new AI buzzword of Apple since last September, when they launched it and mentioned that they want to enhance productivity and keeps our data private. And by that, they launched many new AI apps, like writing tools, image tools. Even Siri is much more powerful with the capabilities of Apple Intelligence. To be honest, this entire research began when one day I had the weirdest interaction with Siri. I was in the office, and I was working on my Notion, you know, the documentation app, where we store all of our organizational files. I was doing a document review to one of my colleagues. And a few moments later, I start talking with Siri. And a few moments later, I noticed that Siri was referencing a topic from my Notion, a title of one of my documents, a classified one. And I start wondering to myself, how Siri has access to my Notion? And was that happen entirely on my device? Or I might have shared information with Apple servers? Do you want to know the answers to these questions? Stay up for the rest of the talk. So my name is Yoav Magid, and I'm very excited to be here today. This is actually my first Black Hat. Thank you very much. I'm 25 years old, from Israel. I'm an 8200 alumni. And today, I work as a team leader and an AI security researcher at Lumia Security. And I came here today to talk with you about some privacy concerns that come with all the new suite of AI of Apple. And I want you to remember one thing during this talk. Those risks, those privacy concerns we're going to talk about are just one example here in Apple Intelligence and Siri, but they exist everywhere. So without any further ado, let's go over our agenda. We're going to talk a bit what is exactly Apple Intelligence, how it works in background. And we'll see what kind of risks, privacy risks, are we talking here about, and how I managed to find them out. And later, we're going to see some demos, how exactly Siri and the other apps in the AI ecosystem interact with our data. And in the end, we'll see how we can mitigate these risks, or at least minimize them. So let's start a bit about talking about Apple Intelligence. So I must say, in the beginning, I thought I knew what is Apple Intelligence. And I think Apple got mad a bit. So I'll try to stick to the script, what is exactly Apple Intelligence. So like I said before, Apple wants to enhance productivity but keeps our data safe. How they are doing that? By simply defining in their infrastructure two groups of models. The first group are on-device models, models that run on the user device, on macOS, on iOS. They do not require any network communication to operate. But you know, the on-device models are not enough in some cases. So they created another group of models. They're cloud models, which more of language models and image models. And by working together, they build on top of that many new experiences. But that is not exactly mentioned how they're working together. So if we dive deeper into their privacy policy, we see that these models are working together by a model that runs on the user device that decides if we can run the user task completely on the user device. And if not, it will need to leverage a larger model from their private cloud compute, their server models. And they're going to send only the relevant data to the cloud in order to fulfill the user request. But it's not everything in the AI ecosystem. We still have another infrastructure involved in the AI ecosystem. Apple has main three components in their AI ecosystem. The first one, like we said, is the private cloud compute. But we have two more infrastructure. The first one will be Siri infrastructure. When we use Siri, there are two more servers that are operating in the background. The first one will be their dictation server, gazuni.apple.com. That's quite funny, because Gazuni is a chief scientist in Siri. So I wonder who has access to this server. And I wonder what is the purpose of this one, since for many years, dictation happens on device. So remember that. The second one will be smooth.apple.com, their search services. Whenever you want to look for something online or something in the Apple ecosystem, Siri uses the search services. When I started this talk, I started looking online about these servers. And I found out that Smooth, people thought it was a spyware because they noticed many, many requests go to that server whenever you hit a click on your keyboard. But I'm pretty sure it's not a spyware. It's just a search services. And the third one will be their Apple Intelligence extensions. For example, ChatGPT, when we want to interact with him through Apple Intelligence ecosystem. And so now we know what is exactly going in the background and how all of these apps are working together. Let's talk about the risks, what we have here. In this talk, I'm going to go over the features of all the AI apps, and we're going to see which features go on the user device without the need to network communication. And the second one we'll see is which features work on the private cloud compute or on any other infrastructure of Apple, like we saw, like Siri. And when we go online, we're going to see which data we sent from our device to the Apple servers. How I'm going to see that? By simply intercepting all the communication between Siri, between writing tools, and the image tools to their servers. And we're going to see which data leaves our device. But it's not that easy as it sounds. I actually work very hard to find this data. Why? So with Apple Intelligence Core, it was kind of easy. They log every request that is being made to the private cloud compute, so we can see it on our device. But with Siri, it was more complicated. Actually, we're going to see for the first time ever, as far as I know, the communication of Siri with their server. Why is that? So every app today uses SSL encryption to encrypt the data that leaves your device straight to the servers, and only the server and the client can know what the data is. But Siri uses another security layer. They use a technique that's called certificate pinning, or SSL pinning, which makes the app to validate that the remote server is actually Apple's server. And by that, it rejects any other server. For example, if I want to do some adversary in the middle attack in order to reveal all the data, I cannot do that because Siri won't accept this connection. So I worked very hard in the last few months to bypass the certificate pinning mechanism of Apple, of course, only on my device. And after that, I decrypted all of Apple protocols behind that, and it wasn't very easy. And in this talk, we're going to go over different features, and we're going to see the actual data that is being sent to Apple servers. So by that, let's start with the different scenarios. But before, I want to start with some baseline for the demos. These screens might look familiar to many of you, since in the last months, they were all over the media after people noticed that whenever you agree to Siri, to Apple Intelligence, by default, you are opt-in to learn from this app, which I don't know what exactly that means. But I made sure that in the beginning of the research, I turned off all the settings, so I won't be expecting to see any data that is not relevant inside the communications. So by defining that, let's go over the first app, Siri, our old love personal assistant, which we know for many years. But now it's got upgraded using the capabilities of Apple Intelligence. For example, one of the new features with Apple Intelligence is the fact that we no longer need to use Siri just with voice activation. We can type to Siri. You know how many headaches it solved me that now I don't need to hear Siri every few minutes telling me, OK, setting up an alarm for 6 a.m. I can just now type to Siri whenever I want without a need to use voice activation. So I was wondering in the beginning how I'm going to research that. I started with a few prompts, and I saw none of the network communication. So I thought to myself, OK, hello, what can you do? How are you? Not going to work. They're going local processing with the localized models. So I needed to compose a prompt that will definitely go online. The prompt that started AppleStorm. There is no model in the world that can know what is the weather today without invoking any API, some tool. So I started with this prompt to see what's going to happen when I send a request to Apple servers, and which data I'm going to have, we're going to find, beside the weather today, which is, by the way, very hot. So let's see what's going to happen in the background. So I typed the prompt, what is the weather today in Las Vegas? And I set up an infrastructure that broke that pinning, intercepted all the traffic, and decrypted the protocol. And the first packet that I saw was being sent to the search services with my prompt. OK, that was very makes sense, because, like I said, it cannot process this on the user device. The first thing I saw in the packet was my precise location. And at the beginning, I said, OK, that makes sense. Like, I asked about the weather, and they want to improve my experience by telling me the exact weather in my location. But that's not really the case here. To be honest, for every request you're doing with Siri, your location is being sent by default. Even if you ask a math question, how much is 1 plus 1? Beside the fun fact that they need network services in order to answer a very simple question like how much is 1 plus 1, they also send your location. But at least they give us control over it. We can go to the settings, to Siri and Apple Intelligence settings, and we can disable Siri from sending our location. They separated to 2 different settings, not much of user experience, but after I disabled that, I couldn't find my location inside the traffic. So that's good. So I scrolled down a bit more in the packet, and I saw an app name, the weather app, the official weather app of Apple. And I said, OK, that also makes sense, because I asked a question about the weather. But after that, I saw another app, and I couldn't recognize that one. There were so many random letters. But I could recognize the parallel word, which is a virtual machine manager that I had installed on my device. So I got inside to the parallels, opened one of my VMs, which was a Windows machine. And inside the Windows machine, there was a weather app with the same name I saw in Apple Communication. So basically, I asked a question about the weather, and it looked up for every weather app I have on my device, including my virtual machines. Very intrusive, I must say. And they send that to Siri search services. So does that happen just because I asked about the weather? After a quick tries, I saw that they're sending your apps for every topic you ask. You might ask about your emails, or about media player, or about coding. Each time you send a prompt to Siri, Siri do some topic modeling on the user device. And by the topic, or many topics you ask, Siri will find every app you have on your device, including virtual machines, and will send the names of the apps to Apple servers. But is that the only apps that they are looking for? So not exactly. I managed to find another packet that is being sent not to the search services, but to the dictation server, which again, I'm not sure what is the purpose of the dictation server. And I could find all my active apps being sent there. When I took that picture, Slack was open, Finder was open, and my Notion. And that was being sent to Apple server through the dictation server. So that was very weird by now, because I saw many data that is not relevant to my simple question, what is the weather today? And I thought to myself, OK, we had some nice data about the context of the user. Probably the next data frame will be about something related to the weather. So I went to the next frame. And it got me very confused. Like, I wasn't really sure why they're sending info about Taylor Swift to Apple servers. And you know, I was really frustrated about it. Like, how they know my favorite song? And after a while, I went up to my browser. And in the many, many tabs I had open, I saw one tab on YouTube that song was playing there. And I was like, wait, are they sending my audio or just metadata about my audio? So I went deeper about that, and I tried many different scenarios. And it seems like every time that something is being added to your now playing queue, this data is going to be sent to Apple servers, both to the dictation server and the search services. If you listen to a song on YouTube, you listen to a recording on your device through VLC in YouTube or any other website, if it's being added to the now playing queue, it will be sent to Apple servers. Remember the demo we saw in the beginning of the talk about Notion? I had a video in that document. And when I played that video, I paused it. I went to a different app. This video was still on the now playing queue. And that was being sent to Apple servers. So I must say that was very weird, because I don't know why the title of the document was attached to the audio, the embedded audio. So that's why we saw titles on the communication. Even when I didn't ask about that. When I asked about the weather, I saw audio metadata. This scenario will happen if I'm not asking about Notion at all, or a similar question. So summarizing what we saw right now, I asked a very simple question about the weather. And it seems like Siri thought I asked about other stuff, like my favorite song or about my apps. Now they even know that I have virtual machines on my device. Like I said, I felt this is very intrusive, like so much context about very simple question. But you know, Siri can do much more than that, not just asking things that we know online. Siri can also use some integrations. For example, I can dictate or write through the new feature of Apple Intelligence. I can write to Siri to send messages or compose an email. So I said, let's see what's going to happen here. I tried the WhatsApp integration with Siri, which required that I will install WhatsApp on the device. So I thought to myself, OK, Siri going to communicate with WhatsApp, and they're going to send a message through the WhatsApp process. I was very shocked to see that Siri sends the message to Apple servers, to the dictation server. The content of the message, the contact name, and his number is being sent to Apple servers. And I thought to myself, is that part of the core logic? So I tested that. I shut down all the communication to Apple servers. I blocked it on my device. So Siri cannot communicate with Apple server at all. And I asked Siri again, can you send this message again? And the recipient got the message without this frame being sent to Apple servers. So I'm not quite sure why is this communication necessary. Also, why it's being sent to the dictation server. I typed it to Siri. So this was very weird. So I started making a list of many integrations that Siri support. And I look for each one if they sent this data to their servers. And I saw this behavior only happens with a messaging service. For example, WhatsApp or iMessage. I saw that in exact behavior when using iMessage either. But with other integrations, like composing an email or going through my calendar, the content was not being sent. You know, besides the metadata about the speakers or maybe my active apps, which are being sent on every prompt we use. But the content of my action, my email I was writing, or the events I checked on my calendar, they weren't sent. All of that was happening on the device, like the WhatsApp or iMessage. But in WhatsApp, there was another packet that is not necessary. But you know, Siri is one app in the AI ecosystem of Apple. So I thought to myself, maybe another thing happened inside this ecosystem. But I was amazed that there are actually really good stuff in the other apps. So I went into the writing tools after I finished with Siri. You know, the writing tools where you can interact with data through your browser, notes, your email, and you can make your content look more friendly or rewrite it. And I was very amazed that most of the features are actually working on the user device. Like I couldn't see almost any network communication goes to the private cloud compute or other Apple infrastructure. The few features that do require network communication went to the private cloud compute, as I expected as a user, after reading their privacy policy and after looking at their marketing. I actually can divide which features require network communication and which one goes on the user device. For example, in this screen, we can see when I turned off my network services, I enabled airplane mode, and I could see that a few features are now disabled. Those features required network communications, and the other feature are not. They're being on the user's device. And when there is network services, it doesn't communicate with Apple servers, like we saw in Siri, that there is some frames that are irrelevant that goes to their servers. So that's quite good. But it's not the only thing they did good in the Apple AI ecosystem. Also, their image playground. At the beginning, I thought, wow, maybe they are sending also images or the prompts we are making with them. But I was very surprised to see that all of the visions and the image playground were entirely on the user device. I went through all the communication, and I couldn't see any packet that related to my prompt, about my pictures, goes to their servers. It was entirely on the image models on the user device. So that's nice. So moving on to our last feature of Apple Intelligence for today, their extensions. When they launched extensions a few months ago, they said that we will be able to expand Apple Intelligence capabilities by integrating third parties. But actually, in reality, only ChatGPT is available. You know, you can communicate with ChatGPT through many instances of the Apple Intelligence ecosystem, through Siri, through the writing tools, which is very nice, like you have a small ChatGPT on your device. But there are two main things that you need to know when you're using ChatGPT through Apple Intelligence. The first one will be that if you thought that you're communicating directly with OpenAI services, that's not true. Actually, each request you are doing with Siri or writing tools to ChatGPT, there goes through Apple servers, not through the private cloud compute or Siri infrastructure, but they go through the third infrastructure, Apple Intelligence extensions. Also, if you logged in with your organizational credentials or your personal account, all your communication goes through Apple servers, not directly to OpenAI. But that's not what I find the most concerned. When I used Siri with ChatGPT, I found that all of my prompts are being sent to two endpoints. One was Apple Intelligence extensions, as I expect. But the prompt was also being sent to the search services we saw before. And that is very weird, because this is not part of Apple Intelligence, as far as I know. And I don't know who has access to it, what they're doing with this information. I have no clue about that. But I do know that the response from the search services is redundant to the user. The user cannot see that. He just sees the response from the Apple Intelligence extensions. So I'm not sure why they're sending these prompts twice. But at that point, I said to myself, OK, this is a good time to stop and go to talk with Apple about it. So I started a disclosure with them about these privacy concerns I had. I started it last February. I sent them all the things we saw here today. They required me much more information. They wanted logs, they wanted pictures, and the entire demos. And I said, OK, I will send you all the data. And I was very surprised that after a few weeks, they said, OK, we're going to address it. We see here something that it is strange, and we are working on a solution to fix that. And I was, OK, I'm very happy. I finished my research. Now they're going to fix it. And then last month, I got another comment from them, which was completely different. They started talking about that all my findings weren't actually Apple Intelligence concerned. There were Siri issues, like the search services and the dictation server are not part of Apple Intelligence at all. They are Siri core servers. And they're not part of the private cloud compute, which we got confirmation for that. And I was very concerned about that. Like, I don't know who has access to that and how old this infrastructure. And also, as a user, it's quite like, I didn't expect that because according to their marketing, I thought that Siri and Apple Intelligence are quite the same today. You actually, if you disable Apple Intelligence on your device, you'll see that the logo of Siri changed to the old logo. And when you enable Apple Intelligence, it goes back to the new logo. So that was very strange, that comment. But they continue. And they then said that, most of the things you found, you should probably reach out to Notion or to WhatsApp, because maybe they are not using Siri properly. There is something called Siri extension, SiriKit, that you can add to your apps, and by that, add integrations with Siri. So they said maybe WhatsApp and Notion are not using it properly. And I thought to myself, Notion has no issue with SiriKit. This is not about Notion issue. It's about the now playing queue. But I said, OK, well, Apple, I will reach out to Notion. I opened a disclosure to Notion, and 3 hours later, they closed that, and they said, we don't care about that. And before reaching to WhatsApp, I thought to myself, OK, this is very weird, because we know it happens on iMessage. We know it's not part of the core logic we saw. I disabled all the communication to Apple servers, and the feature still works. So I said, OK, let's dive deeper to that and see what exactly I can find about that. So I said, this is a very good point to test SiriKit. So I opened a new app. I use Xcode, the IDE for Apple products. And I went into Apple's documentation. I said, let's create an app that looks exactly like their documentation, with their recommendations, their configurations. And I made sure that there is no hidden configuration or some hidden flags that I can pass to the SiriKit, so it won't send this request. And after deploying that, I was very surprised to see the same behavior happen on this app when I use the messaging services with Siri with this exact app. So I'm not that sure that it's WhatsApp using that improperly. I think maybe it's an issue, maybe in SiriKit, maybe in Siri. I don't know, but I can control about that. So I sent this new information to Apple a few weeks ago, and I waited for a response until last night. Last night, they reached out in the last minute, of course, and they said many things. They started by saying that, OK, thank you for testing SiriKit. Maybe there is an issue here, so we'll pass it to our engineering to check it further. So I hope they're going to fix it, and in the next version, it won't happen anymore. But let's see. Let's see what Apple is going to say about that. And they also said that they're willing to clarify some issues with ChatGPT and the private cloud compute. At the beginning, I thought that ChatGPT goes through the private cloud compute, and it's part of it. Like, they communicate with OpenAI servers through the private cloud compute, and now it's a different component. So they're willing to improve their documentation, so there will be more clarification about that. So that's really good. But until they're going to do that, until they're going to fix all of that, I want to share with you some mitigations I have. When I did this research, I saw how I can protect myself from that. So there's not a lot to do, but there are some things that we can mitigate those stuff. My first recommendation is going to be about the dictation server. As far as I know, it's not part of the core logic. So we can basically disable, we can block this communication, and we can minimize the risk of your apps being leaked or your WhatsApp messages. This will mitigate it. This will solve part of these concerns, not all. But this for definitely won't harm the functionality of Siri or other components. By the way, this is a very good point to take some photos of this mitigation. My second recommendation will be about their settings. You know, as we saw in the beginning, there are many settings that we can control of what app they can learn from. I recommend for everybody here to go today, not on one day when you go back to the office, today, to go over your settings, make sure which app you allow Apple to learn from your experience. One of my friends, I saw in his phone that he's sharing apps about healthcare, and I told him, why are you doing that? Just disable it. Many of our data lives there, and we don't know exactly what does it mean, learn from this app. So I recommend you go over that and disable every app you don't want to share. But on a further approach, I have some takeaways about this research. My first takeaway will going to be about privacy policy. You know, I think it's kind of obvious, like everybody here, we don't really read the privacy policy or terms of use. When we go to a new app, we scroll down, we click the I accept the terms of use, and we keep with our lives. So I'm not saying we should read all of this legal stuff, but in this AI era, we must know what kind of data are we sharing? What am I exposed to? Are they able to learn from my experience? What exactly does it mean? So I think something needs to change here, even if maybe showing this data in a different way. You know, one day when I checked into my flight, there was a really nice interactive way to show which stuff I cannot bring to my flight. Maybe this is one of the cool ways to show which data they send about us. Or maybe use ChatGPT for that. No, I can compose a prompt that can summarize the privacy policy just to a few topics of what are they sending about, and it's going to cost me 2 or 3 minutes, but I'll probably have at least the knowledge of what am I sharing about. But if you don't do that, like all of us, like me, we can also use other solutions, more of an enterprise context. You know, governance, it's not a new word. Like, governance is really important, mostly today, when the AI are everywhere. Like here in Apple, we have Apple Intelligence. On Microsoft, we have Copilot, Gemini, and Android. It's everywhere. And organizations need to have the proper tools to know which data leaves their device, leaves their organization. And we need the proper tools to monitor this behavior. You know, it's not just about the prompt or what am I uploading to the AI service. It's about the whole context. You saw most of the concerns here weren't about the prompt I sent, were the extra data that they are looking after. But these tools are not going to work when we don't have transparency. Like I said in the beginning, I worked very hard to break the certificate pinning. I kind of bashed my head against the wall for many days and weeks to bypass the certificate pinning. And after that, to break their protocols was even more harder. Pinning is a very good mechanism in many features, like when you are upgrading software, for example. But when you're interacting with AI, you're uploading data. That should not be an obstacle, not to researchers like me who just want to know what am I uploading, or to organizations who want to monitor their network. We should have the visibility here. This is very important today when we are interacting with AI. Like we get a lot of marketing claims and promises, and these tools can close the gap between their promises to reality. So this is very important. But I want to share one more thought I had from this research. And we're going to finish in a few more moments, and we still have time. So this is a really good point to think about questions if you have about my research. So one last thought. During this adventure, roller coaster, we can call that, I started one day, I found many risks, many privacy concerns about Siri, Apple Intelligence, you name it. And the next day, Apple was saying, OK, this is not Apple Intelligence. This is Siri, about WhatsApp, about Notion. And I was very, very confused, especially on the fact that they're separating Siri and Apple Intelligence to two different things. But their marketing, I understand it like it's more of the same. And I got more into it, and I got very confused. Like, one day, I can just go to Siri. I can ask it about the weather. And Siri will answer me by using Siri features. But on the next day, I can ask Siri, OK, what is the weather vibes that I should prepare for? And that will activate ChatGPT that is being operated by Apple Intelligence. So we have here two features, which basically I ask the same question, different phrase, and they activate two different features, two different privacy policies, two different terms of use, the same app. Me as a security researcher, I can know that because after this long adventure I had in the last few months. But as an average user, can he see that? I have one last question for you for today. Can you tell the difference between them? Thank you very much for listening. I've been honored to be here today, and thank you for coming here. I think we still have some time for questions, so if you can just go to the microphones, I'll be more than happy to answer you.
We do have a couple of minutes for questions if you guys want to line up, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, hi, I've got one. So did you use the virtual research environment, the local PCC installation to do this research? And is certificate pinning still a challenge there?
So I'm not sure about the virtual private cloud compute. I use it on my Mac. I actually use some tools to break the certificate pinning there, which I'm sharing also on a blog that I'm going to post. So you can use the script I use. But no, that was on the regular environment with Siri. Everything is usual on the device, also on iOS. But in iOS, there are some issues with pinning. Not all of the version I can bypass that. So most of my research was on the macOS.
I appreciate your work in verifying the promises from Apple.
Thank you.
A question about the WhatsApp interaction that you had there. I'm wondering if you got the sense that the data that was sent particularly on WhatsApp and to the server on Apple had the same level of security or encryption that WhatsApp guarantees to at all? Whether, I don't know whether that you found any information on that or whether your outreach in Apple came back to say there's a level of encryption or security that matches what WhatsApp offers when using a service like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure about that. Like, they do use certificate pinning and SSL, which is a very good tools. But end-to-end, I'm not that sure. Like, end-to-end have a different meaning. If I send to you a WhatsApp message, it's between us. And there is a third person here. And I'm not sure who has access to it. I just know they're sending it to their servers. I'm not sure what they're doing with that. I have no clue about that. I just know it leaves my device, and it's not needed to do that. Like, you see, I blocked all communication, and Preacher is still working. So I'm not sure what they're doing with that in their servers.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. You have more time? Yeah.
Sorry. First of all, congrats for your investigation.
Thank you.
Awesome. And just by curiosity, did Apple try to understand how or what you did to bypass the pinning? Because bypassing the pinning is something that, from their point of view, should be interesting to know the details of what you did.
Yeah, they were not particularly interested in how exactly, where I put it, the hooks and how exactly I did that, but I told them I used some free script and I used it on my device. They didn't care about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. If someone had more questions, I'll be here today. I'll be also in the Irish pub around 6 p.m., so feel free to come and ask questions. Thank you very much for coming.